those of you who don't know, I am an MBA too. I'm Xinyi, and Philip is actually my fiance. So if you see me like touch his knee, it's not that I inappropriately flirt with all my interviewees. So we will do 30 minutes of questioning and 20 minutes of Q&A. And I like to preface by saying that I'm not going to ask Philip the really standard questions he's been asked so many times in interviews, like why data centers in space, the radiation, cooling, debris, blah, blah, blah. All of it is on the internet, and you can ask him in the Q&A. I plan to ask him questions that he's never been asked before, and push him as much as anyone can, because I can get away with it. So. If you could please not record anything or post anything that's been said, we can allow Philip to be his most unhinged and honest self. But please do come take pictures with us, because Philip is a bit of an influencer on LinkedIn. So, so let's get started with Philip's introduction. Philip is British. I met him 6 years ago, and I thought this person has collected every single brand on his CV that I can possibly imagine. Starting with some short stints, he did Goldman Sachs, United Nations, Spain, a master's in mathematics at Columbia, Wharton MBA, Harvard MPA, where he was also the student body president, after which he moved to Dubai and joined McKinsey. And just 1 year after McKinsey, he founded his own company called Pontia, which is an e-commerce roll-up, raised one of the largest rounds in the region at the time and exited. And 2 years ago, he founded Starcloud. He just 17 months after joining YC, after demo day, they became the fastest YC unicorn. Little applause. He raised a Series A, 170 million, led by Benchmark and EQT. And they sent the most advanced GPU, an H100 in orbit. They trained an AI model, a version of Gemini up there, and he also pulled out the most creative proposal of all time. Next slide. So, he's done a lot of great things. He was invited to Davos to speak recently and gave a TED Talk, also got his Wikipedia page. And in 2026, he was named the sexiest space CEO. This is not a real magazine. He is not revolutionizing the moon. And if it was a real title, I would vote for you, though. So he, on a crazy side quest, Philip recently founded a nonprofit that is sending a probe to Alpha Centauri, which is the nearest star. It's going to be 57,000 years away. Yeah.
It will take 57,000 years to get there.
Yeah. So if you have any questions about that, he would love to nerd out with you afterwards. Did I miss anything, or do you want us to get started? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's rewind back to August 2024, the very beginning of Starcloud. YC just put out a video about Starcloud doing data centers in space. And at this moment in time, no one was doing it, no one was talking about it, and you were the very first company to do this. And let's just say the internet was not very kind. Next slide. So these are all real comments from X, probably 99% negative. But then fast forward now, it's become one of the most consensus ideas in Silicon Valley. So my question to you is, how did you deal with this negativity early on and turn such a controversial niche idea into a mainstream idea?
To be honest, I really didn't expect like this kind of backlash, and it's like the first time I've been in the middle of like a PR kind of nightmare. And like I think at the time we were like, oh shit, this could actually like ruin our fundraise, because we then pitched like 20 VCs almost immediately after this, and like got 20 no's immediately. So we just went through the motions of pitching, and we got to one VC, and actually in the end I think it actually helped us, because the lady that gave us the term sheet in the end, she goes, I've actually read, like the night before she gave us the term sheet, she called me at like midnight. She was like, I've read every single like negative comment and mean tweet there is about you, and that only makes me want to invest more. And I was like, really? Okay. And I think, yeah, like there are some VCs who are deliberately looking for non-consensus ideas, because that's really where you drive all of the biggest outcomes and returns. So it's also good if you get investment from somebody who like knows what they're getting into, then it allows you to take more risk, because you know they're not gonna freak out if it takes longer than expected or anything like that. So yeah, then we just kind of put our head down and ignored it. Yeah. By the way, I should just say, almost every podcast and things I do, they send me the questions before, and I reply saying I'm not going to read the questions because I don't have time and it will make it boring. But I've been like begging the questions for all week, and she hasn't given them to me. So
all organic. So most of us know you have to be contrarian and right, and in the early phase you will get called stupid, but the stupid idea is also called stupid. So how do you differentiate between actual stupid and not stupid? How, especially very early on, you don't have any data to validate these ideas. How do you differentiate the line?
yeah, so that's a very good question, because stupid ideas also sound stupid, as you said. So it's like you really need to make sure you're not on the wrong side of that. I mean, actually, you need to be willing to take a risk that you might be on the wrong side of that. Like, if you're not taking any risk, it probably is not going to have the same potential outcome. So yeah, the way you can give yourself confidence is, number one, if you're working with the best and brightest people in the world. So in our case, like we really have like the best space engineers in the world. If you're working with those kind of people and they're like really convinced it's a good idea, like myself, I don't come from a space engineering background, so it's kind of, like if I tell people this is a great idea, they're not going to believe me as much as if an ex-SpaceX engineer or an ex-NASA guy says it's a good idea. So yeah, like actually I can't remember which podcast it was recently, but they said you should really start investing in, when smart people come to you with bad ideas, that's a good time to invest. And I think that makes sense. Like, if you index on the people and not the idea, that's a good way to do it.
Was there ever a moment where you thought what you were doing was stupid? Like, did you ever have any self-doubt?
We've like pivoted many times into what we're doing now. So like at first we were doing like a relay, like a data relay system, and we were trying to. This does sound a bit stupid in hindsight, but we were trying to put a Starlink user terminal on the back of a satellite, and then just use it like a regular user terminal, because that's how, like a Starlink user terminal, you put it in your garden and it like goes up to a satellite. So we were trying to fly a satellite very low, like 300 kilometers altitude, so half the altitude of regular Starlink satellites, and just have like an unmodified regular Starlink user terminal on the back, and then just like use it normally. And the reason we thought this was going to work is because my co-founder previously worked at Starlink on the project to make Starlink work for Starship. Starship is a new launch vehicle. And they basically did that. They basically stuck an unmodified user terminal on the back of it, and then like got it to work somehow. So like for the first like 6 months we were trying to do that, and we were trying to convince SpaceX to let us do that. Lots of people thought that was a really dumb idea as well. And then in the end, basically SpaceX were like, yeah, we're not going to let you do that. But instead, we'll let you pay an enormous amount of money to buy a laser terminal which connects directly into Starlink, and that's essentially what the architecture we have now is this like laser terminal connected to Starlink. But yeah, every pivot we've like realized that what we're doing is dumb, and then pivoted.
So you built the fastest unicorn under very unusual circumstances. You have 0 revenue, a team smaller than 15 people, a CEO with no formal space backgrounds, and also you were older than the average YC batch. You were kind of like the grandpas in YC. How old was your average team? It was about 40, right? So
Yeah, 41 was the average.
Yeah.
Can we get to the next slide? More than previous, yeah.
So raise of hands, who wants to build a unicorn someday? Yeah, I figured. There's a lot to unpack, but is there any advice that you would like to give to us that want to build a unicorn?
My main advice is like really index on extremely strong technical talent on the founding team as like the most important thing you can do. Even if you have like a really terrible idea, if you have incredible technical talent on the founding team, you'll find your way to something good. Whereas if you start with a great idea and mediocre technical talent, it's like very hard to course correct from that. It's like, yeah, especially if your CTO is not somebody that can attract other amazing technical talent. Like our CTO, or our chief engineer was at SpaceX, which means he can hire SpaceX people. If you hire a chief engineer from Blue Origin, and I really apologize if anybody works with Blue Origin, but if you hire somebody from Blue Origin, they can't recruit anybody from SpaceX because nobody at SpaceX respects Blue Origin. So it sounds dumb, and you might be like, oh, well, like you can have good engineers at Blue Origin. Of course you can, but you need them to have like a pedigree. Like you need them to be like a wow, like at least. Yeah, it's not always the case, but in our case, I found it extremely helpful to have just unbelievably talented technical, co-founders, and that then enables you to build the rest of the team around that.
How were you able to convince those technical co-founders not only to work with you, but let you be the CEO?
So the way the team came together is I essentially messaged cold on LinkedIn the 50 best space engineers in the world, and I was like, I'm founding a space company. I'm looking for some co-founders. And then I got on a call with them, and so about 10 of them took a call, and 2 of them said yes, and they ended up being my co-founders. Like, lots of people will probably advise against this method of finding co-founders because they think that it's very important that you're like best friends with your co-founder for a long time. I actually totally disagree with that. I think it's very important that you both respect each other's contribution and individual skill. And if that is true, and so long as you're both reasonably high integrity, if that is true, then everything else can work itself out. You don't need to be best friends with your co-founders. I don't think that's true at all. So yeah, that's how I found them. As a non-technical person in the team, like your role is to like get the money somehow. So either by customers or by fundraising. So if you can convince them that you're good at raising money, then that also helps a lot.
You don't really have a traditional background for space CEO. Were there any investors that had any doubts about this, and how were you able to convince them and charm them, like aside from your British accents and everything?
Yeah, I'm sure many. Like with the Series A, even that we just did now, it ended up being like mega oversubscribed, but we got like at least 30, maybe 40 VC rejections before we got the first term sheet. I'm sure 5 or 10 of them were like the CEO needs to be more technical. Like that's probably a reason that people came. But like there's a lot of VCs, so you just go to the next one.
Yeah, it's quite common here at Stanford to be very skeptical of YC, and people don't want to give up equity. They think it's overrated. What do you say to those people?
I'm like the biggest proponent of YC ever. I'm a huge fan. Like, in terms of the equity and ownership stuff, if YC doubles your valuation at the next round, then they more than pay for themselves in equity and ownership, and like it's like a 0.5% acceptance rate now. So like the stamp actually just does double your valuation. Like if you can raise whatever you think you can raise at now, let's say you can raise 2 at 20. Most people in here can probably raise 2 at 20. If you get into YC, you'll raise 4 at 40, and that like immediately pays for itself in terms of the YC like dilution. But then beyond that, like I actually really like the community, and I like the partners, and I think it's just a great program in general.
Where do you think Starcloud would be without YC?
It's hard to say. It would have, like our seed would have been much harder to put together. Yeah, we raised like a $21 million seed out of YC, and that was like would have been super hard to get that together. With that, like they just give you visibility. Like they've done all these videos on us and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So space is a really risky industry, and sometimes when investors pass on Starcloud, they say it's a bet on a bet. And because for Starcloud to thrive, you need the launch costs to come down dramatically. How do you think about weighing risks, and when do you know it's a bet worth betting on?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
I mean, when do you know it's a risk worth taking when it's space is in general very risky?
I think so what we're doing is very risky, and it still has I would say I even say this to our investors, there's still probably a 50% chance of any of our investors getting any money back. But there's a 5% chance of them getting 1,000x return, and so that's definitely a good bet to take for investors. But as a startup, your role in the ecosystem is to take one very concentrated bet and run as hard as you can at that. And so long as you do that to the best of your ability, nobody's gonna be mega pissed off if it doesn't work out. So I think that's how I think about it. Is we're being funded to take a very concentrated bet, and that's fine if that's risky. That is the whole game.
You're so far also the only data centers in space company that has put something in space, right? How were you able to execute so quickly compared to the other companies?
Yeah, that's one of the main advantages of a startup is you can just take ridiculous risk and move as fast as you can. So we started the company January 1st, 2024. On January 2nd, it was my co-founder and me sitting in a WeWork in Los Angeles. We were okay, let's just book a launch, whatever the closest launch we can book is, let's just book it. So it turns out you can just go on SpaceX.com, you pay $5,000 on your credit card, and you can literally just book the next launch. So we did that. And the whole launch was only $300,000. So then there's milestones, and then you have to go through all the regulatory compliance and all this kind of stuff. But it's actually surprisingly easy. So once we did that, we booked it for 18 months later. It was the closest launch we could book. It wasn't even in the right orbit. The thing we have at the moment is what we call mid-inclination, and we need to be in this polar sun synchronous orbit. But anyway, we just wanted to get something in space. And then we were just running to this deadline, and it was an absolute slog. Come November that year, we realized we were well, first we weren't even going to put an H100 in it, and then so for those who don't know, an H100 is was Nvidia's most powerful AI chip. And yeah, we were okay, if we can get this H100 in, we know it's going to get loads of attention, because what it means is if you can do training on this, which is we just trained the first model in space, for example, and if you can do high-powered inference, that's going to open the floodgates for everybody. So we're okay, let's try our hardest. But yeah, it meant we were running up against this deadline, and then on the day that we had to ship down the payload, so Adi and Ezra, my co-founders, built the entire compute module by hand and the antennas and everything. And so it gets to 11 p.m. You're supposed to put the whole thing through what they call thermal vacuum chamber testing, which is a bit like TVAC, basically where you put it in a vacuum chamber, then you heat it up to 60 degrees, you cool it down to -50, you heat it up, because it's going to, as it goes over in front of the shadow of the Earth and behind it, gets really hot and cold. So you're supposed to put it through a day of that kind of testing. So it's 11 p.m. We realize we're not going to get to the thermal chamber in time. So so I went to the Safeway, I bought a bucket of ice. And we filled the whole thing with this phase change material, so that when it gets really hot, that the change in phase, from solid to liquid, dissipates the heat. So we needed to, and it expands when you do that, so we needed to solidify this thing and then heat it up, and then solidify and heat it up. So we literally got the whole thing, dunked it in an ice bath, and I was are you sure this is not bad for the electronics or anything? My co-founder was no, don't worry, it'll be fine, because it's hermetically sealed and all that stuff. So we dunked it in an ice bath for half an hour, the whole thing solidified, pulled it out, had hair dryers on it to melt all of the space change material. We literally did that for 2 hours, and then at 5 a.m. No, I think it was we went through the whole night until 7 a.m. and then my co-founder put it in his hand luggage and flew it to Colorado to. So that's what you can do as a startup, which you can't do as we got a quote from I think it was either Lockheed or Northrop Grumman on what they would charge us if we just asked for the specs that we had on Starcloud 1. Starcloud 1, by the way, the whole thing cost $2 million, so it's $300,000 for the launch, $1 million for the bus, and then the remainder on testing and chips and other things. So $2 million, and the quote we had from Lockheed was $75 million to $100 million to put an H100 in space in this orbit and everything else. And so That's the advantage of a startup. And it could have like totally gone wrong. And we could have like, it was like, I was like, in my mind I'd written it as like a 50% chance that we never make contact with the satellite. And that is historically what it's been like for first time satellites for startups. It's like 50% you never make contact. So I was like fully prepared for just not making contact with it, but yeah.
His investors are so okay with risk that Philip, for April Fools or something, or like he posted an AI-generated picture of Starclouds blowing up. It was like all in fire, which is not possible in space apparently. But he got a lot of very supportive messages from his investors.
Yeah.
Like, what did they say?
Yeah, they were like, oh, I'm sorry to hear about Starcloud. And it was like a bonfire in space. So that was not Starcloud 1.
Did you show them the pictures of the hairdryer and the wax?
Some of them, the more friendly ones I've shown. And like, I'm gonna wait until the success of Starcloud 2, and then I might do a post about it.
So if you had to give Starcloud a probability distribution of mega success versus solid exit versus bankruptcy, what would be the percentage allocation?
To be frank, I think there's probably still about a 50% chance that it goes to 0. And that's like fine. Like after the success of Starcloud 1, the odds of success have gone up a lot. Yeah, we now have just like tons of like. We just raised this round. We're also probably going to take another $100 million, so we're going to have like tons of cash to just execute and just keep launching stuff now. So I think there's like a 10% chance of like a good outcome to selling it for billions of dollars.
Where is 10%, 50%?
And then like a 5% chance of, or like sub 5% chance of it going to 100 billion. I mean, in theory, there's no upper limit to the TAM and what we're doing. Like we're competing with all inference compute, and that is like, we just filed with the FCC for a constellation of 88,000 satellites. That's about 20 gigawatts of compute. And that's just the beginning, but that one alone allows us to deploy about $100 billion worth of capex. And with the chips, it'd be like sort of $500 billion. And if, let's say we have we double our money in 5 years, that's like $1 trillion of revenue. So we've filed with the FCC for something that can give us $1 trillion of revenue. I mean, the potential upside of what we're doing, that's why we raised such a ridiculous round, is because the potential upside is absolutely gargantuan.
The most spicy question, saved it for last. How many times did you apply to the GSB, and what did it teach you about rejection?
I applied to the GSB 3 times, and I was rejected 3 times. I'm very jealous of what you like. It's an amazing place to be. Sometimes they like trash on MBAs in the VC world, but it's a dumb thing to do, because you just have to like look at the stats of what MBAs end up doing, and particularly like Stanford MBAs, like a way higher, like an absurdly high unicorn rate, absurdly high CEO Fortune 500 company rate, So I wouldn't trash them as much as most people say.
So you sometimes say that your raison d'être is being rejected. You applied to YC twice before getting in, applied to McKinsey 3 times before getting in. How do you keep going?
It is very helpful to be able to keep going when you get rejected from stuff. I would give I'm an identical twin. I have an identical twin brother. I think that actually helps quite a lot, because we kind of leapfrog each other. He does something cool, and I do something cooler, and then he does something cooler. So if he, for example, he got into BCG before me, and then he did some other stuff. But if he can get into BCG, I'm not going to get rejected from McKinsey and then be like, okay, well that's it, I'm never going to apply. I'm just like, well, with this, he doesn't have anything like, you know, like we have the same genetics, we have basically it's basically the same environment. So yeah, it helps like give you belief in yourself, I guess, and that's like the key tool for all of success in life. Basically, is like just being able. You need to believe that you can do it first, and that is a very good hack. Is having it. So if you're thinking about getting an identical twin, I highly recommend.
Well, thank you so much. One last thing is, for view from the top, they do a rapid fire question, but I would like to play a word association game with you. So I'm going to say a word, and the first thing that pops up into your head, you have to say it quickly. Okay, we'll start off easy. Cats.
Evil.
Space.
Amazing.
Y Combinator.
Community.
Rockets.
Epic.
Billionaire. You're thinking too much.
Billionaire. Power.
Wedding.
Excitement.
I thought you were going to say expensive.
Well, that's
Mentors.
waste of time.
Unicorns.
Transient.
Technical co-founders.
Vital.
MBA.
Ooh. Useful.
Marriage.
Beautiful.
That was it. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, you did. You passed. Tony?
Can you describe how you proposed? Like, you know, we've seen a picture. But, like, what was the motion? How are you feeling? Can you slow down that entire journey?
Sure, happy to. Well, actually, so I had planned to go to this little like pipe island in the Bahamas, and then 4 days before this hurricane came through, and so I like had to like rapidly reschedule everything. So I was like flustered, shall I say? And then basically, I told Xinyi that we were going to do a photo shoot for the sunrise. But what actually was happening is Starcloud 1 was passing over at like 6 a.m. The first satellite was going to be like right above us. And I'd written it on there, so I had to like find a way to tell her that I wrote it on there. So I made a photo album with like all these pictures of our relationship up until that point. And then in the middle it stopped, and then it was blank till the end. In the middle was that picture, but I like skipped that. And then at the end was like our 2 gravestones. So I was like showing, this album of like our relationship, and then it got to the middle, and I was like, the rest is empty because this is where we're going to put more pictures from our children, our wedding, and our life, and then get to the end, and it's like a gravestone. And you mentioned like your grandfather and grandmother are in the same grave. And then I was like, there's actually one more picture that I forgot to show you, and I skipped back to the middle page. And the last one was this picture of the Starcloud 1 satellite. And then got down on
That's
me.
when I was crying.
And then she was born.
June?
First of all, congratulations again.
Thanks.
Xinyi and our flatmates in Cambridge, and like first I vividly remember it was like past midnight. I saw this guy and Xinyi like ordering Chinese food, like you were in shorts, and I was like, this will do. Next day, Xinyi tells me like, oh, he's launching a rocket. And what? It's good. It was so cool. Can you just like walk us through the unit economics of like how how more economic is it to put data centers in space? You can assume both training and inference, or pick one, and you can assume a certain stage where you think like it's like very commercial.
Yeah. Maybe I'll I'll illustrate it with like 1 megawatt of compute, which is like 5 of our Starcloud 3 satellites that launch on Starship. So all of that, the satellite bus and everything else, so bus is like the box that has solar panel radiators. There'll be about $1 million each, so about $5 million for 1 megawatt. So the infrastructure costs $5 million. If you build new infrastructure for data centers on Earth, you're talking about $15 to $20 million per megawatt. And the reason for that is, number one, you need permitted land. That's very expensive, particularly for a new permitted land, particularly for a new energy project. If you're going to cover 10 square kilometers of countryside with solar panels, permitted land is very expensive. Number two, you need batteries and backup power, because particularly for like solar, which is the cheapest form of energy on Earth, you're only producing energy for about 4 hours per day at the peak. So you need to store that to be used at night, and batteries is very expensive. And then, yeah, like the last, or solar cells themselves, you need about 8 times less solar cells in space than you do on Earth, because 1 square meter of solar panel in space produces 8 times the energy of one on Earth. So the only additional cost we have is the launch cost, which is right now about $5,000 a kilo. We're expecting as it gets to $500 a kilo to be roughly break even. So yeah, the cost of launching that 1 megawatt is going to be another $5 million additionally. But then the real advantage is we save, we don't pay any energy costs. So if you run a megawatt for 5 years and you're paying 10 cents per kilowatt hour, that's basically another $1 million per year. So you've got then another $5 million. So it's getting a bit technical now, but so yeah, so in short, terrestrial is $15 to $20 million per megawatt, and then another $1 million per year on top of that. And ours is $5 million per megawatt, and then we have free energy. And it can be much cheaper than that. That's like that's without mass manufacturing and all the other things that will come. So, I'll let you do it.
Yeah, I have 2 quick questions. One is just in the early days when you were doing the LinkedIn cold emails, what helped you convince them to like take the call with you and to take the bet with you? And then the second one is, as a Redmond native, I'm curious to hear your thoughts or like your perspective on like why you guys are contributed there versus like LA.
Yeah. So I was a founder of a previous company when I was reaching out to them, and there had been some press about the rounds we'd raised, and we did a $42 million Series A for that one. So it got some headlines. So I think they took seriously my ability to like raise maybe because of that. But I was like pretty candid with them up front. I was like, look, I am not a space engineer. Like we need to come up with this idea together basically. But yeah, that's basically it. And then Redmond is like the only place we could be building this. People don't realize this, but you probably know, but like most people here probably don't know, 90% of all satellites launched in the last 2 years were designed, built, tested in Redmond. And the reason is the whole Starlink team is there. The whole Amazon Leo, now what used to be called Kuiper, is there. And just down the road is Blue Origin. And then on the data center side, you have AWS and Azure are both headquartered in Redmond. So like we actually started in LA in El Segundo because we thought we had to be there for the space talent, but nobody there knows about building satellites. They all know about propulsion and launch and aerodynamics, but not actually building satellites.
I'm just curious, do you think space is a good place to store this kind of governance data, because it's very sensitive and it's across different countries?
Yeah. Yes. There is a lot of people who are approaching us about doing data storage in space, and the reason is if you don't interact with US ground stations, you don't have to be regulated by the FCC. You can basically pick any jurisdiction in the world to be regulated by, which means, yeah, it's potentially a very nice place to do things around governance.
Hope we can have some collaboration in the future.
Yes.
So what's the lifetime of Starcloud 1 and what happens towards the end of it?
Starcloud 1 is about 2 years, and it will have a fiery demise at the end of 2 years.
So you won't send it off to Alpha Centauri?
I would love to send it to Alpha Centauri.
That would be cool.
No, Starcloud 1 won't go. It's really just a demonstrator.
What makes you say there's still a 50% chance of
failures on the next 2 launches, which be pretty not great for us, because we'd then be fundraising on the back of 2 failures. So that, we could easily, I mean, what we're doing is, like, we really are pushing the boundary on the second one. We've got these massive deployable radiators. So yeah, if there's failure on that, that would be a disaster. The other thing is the SpaceX dependency. We are like mega dependent on SpaceX, and I'm not 100% sure how that's going to play out.
How big are Starcloud 2 and Starcloud 3?
Starcloud 2, the one launching in 9 months, is it's a 400 kilogram spacecraft, about like this big, quite this big. And then we'll launch a very similar version of that next year, and then Starcloud 3 will be much larger. It's a 3-ton, 200 kilowatt, so it's like almost the length, about like half the length of this room, and then with 100 meter by 100 meter deployable solar panels and radiators.
Oh, Suja?
What matters most to me?
What matters most to you is the one you wrote for just change your current version, except for Xinyi.
Yeah. You matter most to me. What I wrote to GSB, this is embarrassing now. I was doing currency derivatives trading at the time. I was based in Singapore, and we'd written these like algorithms to like make financial transactions like less like you're screwing everybody, and like fairer for the customer and things. I think I wrote, this is terrible, but I got an interview for this is the only time I got an interview, so I'll caveat with that. I think I wrote, what matters most to me is fair and transparent financial markets. Besides me, I think what matters most to me now is like, actually, like Elon has a similar philosophy that is like just trying to be useful in general for the world, for my fellow humans. It's my striving goal in life.
Catherine?
Again, extremely beautiful to see my friend founding her club. I'm wondering, when it comes to scale, like essentially into the data center size that we need in the space, which will be coming to your regular size, 50 megawatts per data center. That's a regular size, and it's inevitable that there will be more exposure in terms of materials interfacing with UV lights, which is extremely dangerous when it comes to cell performance. And what, like, is there any advancement in terms of packaging knowledge that we need to achieve before we can actually actualize the data center in space concept?
I'll answer the first one, and then I'm going to ask you to restate the second one because I'm not sure I fully understood it. But in order to get to 50 megawatts, it's coming sooner than people think. It's as soon as Starship is flying frequently, we can basically launch 50 of these stack of 200 kilowatts per Starship launch. So you're talking about 10 megawatts per Starship launch. And that means if you launch 100 Starships, you're talking about a gigawatt. And potentially we can launch hundreds per year. So we'll be launching many tens of gigawatts of new capacity per year. And then I didn't understand the point about UV.
Yeah, I think UV light radius actually impact when it comes to cell performances.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, like degradation from radiation.
Degradation from radius.
For the solar panels, we're expecting to lose about 2% per year, which is on efficiency, which is what we see on the Starlink satellites. And they use dirt cheap, like terrestrial silicon cells. We're not using, for ages people use these gallium arsenide, like very expensive space grade cells. Now they just use terrestrial silicon cells, and you just have a slightly higher failure rate, so they're expecting about 2% per year degradation. Yeah, does that answer the question? If you mean about the chips, do you mean about the chips?
Yeah, I mean that's
well, UV I don't think is a problem, but what is a problem is high velocity protons and heavy ions that come streaming from the sun and also from the Van Allen radiation belt. And so we have to have shielding around the sensitive parts. And the way we know the thickness of the shielding is we do a whole bunch of testing on the ground. So we've done 3 rounds of testing at the particle accelerator in Knoxville, have a high velocity proton particle accelerator. I think we're the only people in the world that know where an H100 will fail if you blast it at high velocity protons. And then we did one round of testing at Brookhaven National Lab for the heavy ion particle accelerator they have down there. And then with all of that telemetry and data, we know then we use that to inform the choice on shielding and software design.
Yes.
How do you deal with heat dissipation? And then also, like, when you reach scale, presumably there's a ton of maintenance and repair. Like, it must be much harder to access the rack scale GPUs. So.
Yeah, both good questions. So with the heat rejection, because space is a vacuum, it's there's no convection or conduction, so everything needs to be through infrared radiation into deep space. And the way you do that is just with a large surface area that you keep warm, and it just glows essentially in infrared. So everything that is warmer than the things around it just permanently glows in infrared. So if you had an infrared camera on your face now, you'd see it's glowing. And the same is true in space. So if we keep like a panel of aluminum at 50 degrees C, it will emit about 800 watts per square meter of infrared into the vacuum of space. And the solar panels themselves generate about 200 watts per square meter. And so what that means is you just need an extra quarter again the surface area in radiator than you have on solar panels. So that's what we're building. The core IP of our company is this very large, low cost and low mass deployable radiator. And we've basically achieved that now. So it's not a physics problem because the International Space Station has a radiator that dissipates about 70 kilowatts. It's been going for like 20 years. It's a manufacturing problem, and we've made this radiator that's now 10 times less mass per watt of dissipation than the ISS radiator, and about 100 times less cost per watt of dissipation than the ISS radiator. So yeah, that's like the core engineering challenge of the team. And then on maintenance, the satellites we're not going to have access to, at least for the first few iterations. We won't have access to them for the first, for their life of them. So it's very similar to the Starlink satellites. There's about 10,000 Starlink satellites. They never get touched or maintained or anything like that. Same as your mobile phone. Like most people never have their mobile phone serviced. And so you just need to have redundancy on the critical systems, and then you over provision things which fail over time, like solar panels and radiators. You just slightly over provision.
I'm curious, going back to the proposal, just for me to understand. So you wrote it onto the rocket, launched it into space, and then waited and held that space secret for how long before you actually proposed?
About 6 months.
So 6 months, this thing was rotating. Bravo.
I was there at the launch, and he told me he was really happy that it didn't blow up for a reason I would never be able to guess. And I was like, what do you mean? It's not about raising a Series A? So it took me 6 months to understand why.
How did you come up with that idea?
Honestly, I thought it was like the most obvious idea ever. I'm like shocked that nobody's done that before. I was like really expecting somebody to be like, oh, like that's been done before, but I guess it hasn't.
He actually told investors in a pre-seed that they could write their own name on it for like if they're an investor, but then he had to kick them out for no reason. And then
They're still bitter about being kicked out. So I might have to put it on the Alpha Centauri probe instead. That's the compromise.
Yes.
Do you think if there's like a mass deployment of space-based data centers, that is going to usher in like a new era of like space-based solar, potentially like microwave beam down energy, or is that still are the launch costs not low enough to make that economically viable yet?
So that was one of our crazy ideas that we pivoted out of. But we did spend, actually the original name of the company was for that business model. So the original company name was called Lumen Orbit, and then we got sued by Lumen Technology, so we had to change it. But Lumen meaning like luminosity in orbit because of this space-based solar. So for those who don't know, space-based solar is where you have a huge solar panel in space, and then you somehow beam that power down, usually with microwaves, but there are other ways. So we basically ran the numbers on that business model, and we were like, what does the launch cost break even need to be for that to make sense? And we came to the conclusion it was around $50 per kilo, which is like within range of Starship. Starship potentially can do $20 a kilo, but it's very far away from where we're at today, which is $5,000 a kilo. So yeah, like we literally spent probably 3 months like just doing this idea, and we were trying to find customers for the power. So we were like, okay, well, yeah, what are we going to use this power for once we get it down? And we started looking, and we were like, okay, well, most new power projects today are being built to power data centers. So we were like, well, either directly or indirectly, this power is probably going to be going to supplement data centers, basically. And then we were like, well, you know, if we can find a cheap way to get the data center to space, wouldn't that make more sense? Because we don't lose all of that power and transmission from space to Earth. And then we reran all those numbers, and we wanted to know, okay, what's the break-even launch cost for space data centers to make sense? And then we came to a number around $500 a kilo. And then we're like, okay, so we put together a white paper for that, published a white paper, and then that basically became the company.
Nadia?
Congratulations again. Xinyi knows more
Thank you.
than us. Yeah, let me do the Zoom move. So I was wondering in terms of yeah, your life choices. Like if you were a fresh MBA grad now, what would you be doing if not Starcloud? And you've done like this McKinsey path and then founding something smaller and then something bigger. Is that how you go about it nowadays too?
So maybe I'll answer specifically if your goal is like to found a unicorn at some point in your life, maybe, or.
I mean, at some point.
Yeah. Like if you're optimizing for at some point in your life founding a unicorn, there are lots of people who should found immediately after business school. I think that probably makes sense for some people. I'll tell you why I didn't and why I think it's kind of individual for everybody. Like what you need to do is convince yourself that you are like good enough and capable enough, and like that nobody else knows anything that you don't know. And there are lots of people that already have that, like a bunch of like 16-year-olds in Y Combinator who have that in the States. And it's like, you know, great for them to found. Like I left business school still thinking like there was this like secret formula that all the McKinsey people knew that I didn't know. And so like it was still valuable for me to go, if only to find out that there isn't like a secret formula. And it's not something that you can really internalize like without, you know, by somebody telling you it. Kind of like need to be in the room where you realize, like my first project, the like chairman of the board of this bank, this like huge bank in the Middle East, was just like talking absolute crap, and they were making like the dumbest decisions just based on nothing. And I was like, okay, I guess this is how the world works. Like nobody has any idea what they're doing. Everybody's making up as they go along. And if you like the quicker you can get to that point, and that might be kind of McKinsey for you as well. It might not be like the better. So that, yeah, maybe it's not very good tangible advice, but the other thing is you really do need really strong technical co-founders. Like it's very hard to think of an example of a unicorn that doesn't have an extremely strong technical co-founders. And so you need to put yourself in a position, if you're not that yourself, where you can recruit that. And by the way, sometimes MBAs think they're technical because they, you know, maybe they did an engineering undergrad or something, but then they've worked in a bank. You're not technical unless you can build the product from scratch yourself. Like, and that doesn't mean, well, I don't know. Yeah, Claude Code is good, but the problem is if you're not in the top 1% of people that can use Claude Code, it's still not good enough. You know, it's still going to get crushed. So you need to either be that yourself or align with people who are that.
So what would you be doing if not Starcloud now?
Well, I can tell you what I would do. Like, let's say Starcloud got bought for $1 billion, or a few $1 billion tomorrow. I would probably spend a good amount of my time working. I'm working on this non-profit to get a probe to the nearest star out of Centauri. So I'd probably spend a good amount of my time doing that. Yeah, and then I'd probably like found another company at some point. I'm not sure what in, but like for anybody who's not about to graduate, the chance that what is a good startup idea today is still a good startup idea in a year's time is very low. So I wouldn't like beat yourself up about the fact you don't know like what you're going to found yet. Although you are graduating now.
Yes?
I really like this have started with self-space like Philip Johnston. I have technical and business question. What do you prefer?
We can do both.
Correct. So technical. So since you say that like the infrastructure cost is effectively the bonus that you get when you go to space, what do you think about
And energy.
and energy? Yeah. What do you think about nuclear fusion and nuclear fusion here on Earth, and how this will complete in the next 3-4 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I'm very bullish on nuclear fusion. I think it will work. I hope it works. It can never. It's going to be like. It's never going to like solar is just like unbelievably cheap. So like the lowest forecast cost I've ever seen for nuclear fusion is 20 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's from helium energy. And they're like the most incentivized to get a low forecast. We're targeting much less than 0.5% per kilowatt hour. So it's like it's a completely different order of magnitude. It's not even like close. So yeah, that doesn't really make a difference.
On the business side, if you put all these assets now in space, so you're effectively putting lots of material assets, how do you see about risk in terms of maybe
Insurance.
Insurance, regulatory, policy-related issues when you bring collisions and all these facts?
I think we have a pretty good case study for that already, which is there's 10,000 Starlink satellites in orbit already, and they managed to make that work. My guess is they just don't insure them until that shit. But they haven't had a single orbital debris collision event failure on any of them yet. So yeah, I think it's very solid.
So I know you mentioned earlier
Spicy questions.
you're worried about your reliance on SpaceX, and one thing I was just thinking of is once if the data centers in space does start working, then SpaceX will end up having the current capacity problem that the current hyperscalers all have, where they have more demand than they're able to possibly satisfy. So I imagine what SpaceX would do is then devote all their launch capacity to their all internal product. What are your strategies you're thinking of that you might be able to get around that day comes?
Yeah, that would not be great for us. There's a whole bunch of launch vehicles coming online now. So Solar Space has one, Rocket Lab has one, Neutron, New Glenn is coming online. So yeah, my hope is there's going to be like more competition in the launch market overall. But if SpaceX decides they don't want to sell us Starship capacity, that would really be a big problem for us. But I mean, right now they're building these 2 Starship gigafactories that are designed to produce 3 Starships per day, which is just mind-blowing capacity. It's like on the order of 1,000 or 10,000 times the current capacity we have, and they are very keen to fill that. Like they are trying to find customers for that. They held a big event in Starbase recently called Build Big, where they're just like trying to encourage customers to build big satellites because they want them to use this launch capacity. It's coming on.
Okay, unless anyone has any other questions, thank you so much for
Oh,
coming.
there's one more.
Oh, okay, yes.
There have been proof of concepts about distributed training where people are moving away from conventional data centers.
Yeah.
So is that something you've thought about, and how does that impact your company?
We don't plan on doing any training basically ever. And the reason is, well, number one, right now you mainly need the thing to be concentrated in one cluster, and that's really hard to do in space. But let's say you could train a model on a distributed cluster. It's still only like, in the end state, and particularly in 5 years' time when we're up and running really at scale, it's going to be less than 1% of all compute is going to be in training. So it's just not even a good market to go after anyway. So yeah, we're not going to do any training.
All right. Thank you so much, Philip Johnston, for coming.